Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me and John on our first January transfer window. It's not our fault, really. We've been waiting for Bournemouth to get down to business. And in the last week, we've had outgoings, potential incomings. We'll bring everything up to speed, won't we, John? And after that last result, we need to get moving because we're at panic stations potentially.
Absolutely. Outgoings that, in hindsight, I think a few fans have very much called into question given the injury to Solanke, but the squad was full. We needed to let go of people before we could bring anyone in, and we have done that. We have 3 confirmed outgoings, and we have 1 apparently confirmed to be on its way in, though that has yet to be announced officially yet. But we'll dig into that over the course of the video.
Stay with us then. Make sure you subscribe to Cherries Red Army as we have gone past 1,350. Thank you very much for your continued support. Also hit the like button on this video. We like to get to 50 likes to help the video grow and do well on YouTube. And we're going to ask you at the end for your thoughts in the comments. As John just said, there were outgoings last week. Let's start rattling through them then, John. The first outgoing was James Hill to Hearts. He's gone out on loan. He recently got man the match in a 1-0 win against St Mirren. Needed this move, hasn't had many games, and this could do him the world of good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we brought him in from Fleetwood originally, if my memory serves me. I haven't looked that up, so I'm hoping I got that one right. Initially, what was it, 1 million? I think it was a record transfer out from Fleetwood. Very highly rated youngster, was getting good minutes in League One at the time, I think it would have been. But just he's got, about 12 minutes against Barnsley in the league for us. It's something like that. It really hasn't been given very many opportunities at all. And he looked okay in preseason friendlies that I remember seeing of him. Nothing, you can't really take too much into that. So I'm pleased for him that he's able to go out and get some game time. And, for what is currently the 3rd best team in Scotland, that's, we're looking at roughly lower championship level, maybe upper League One level is typically the other 8 teams in the Scottish Premier League. So, it should be a good level, and he'll get some good practice against some of the better teams in Rangers and Celtic. But not a bad way to make your debut to get a man of the match performance and a clean sheet.
There were some great tweets from Hearts fans all over Twitter. I know I retweeted one. They were absolutely in love with James Hill already. I think he played to the right of a back 3, and we wish him luck, and he'll hopefully come back a stronger defender for next season. The next outgoing then was Jamal Lowe. And again, John, it's not a surprise. He's not had many minutes this season. He added value in that championship promotion season. He's gone out to QPR, a league he's comfortable with, and he got an assist off the bench against Reading in a 2-2 draw. Again, though, we can't begrudge Jamal Lowe minutes in the second half of the season.
No, exactly. We clearly have a very good system in place for our players to go out and then prove themselves with Hill and Lowe, obviously, producing the goods in their debut performances for their new clubs. Yeah, Lowe was always 3rd choice striker at best. And another option on the wing. We brought him in for his versatility because he could play anywhere along the front. But yeah, I mean, I think as much as he will probably be frustrated that he was never given the chance to show that he had possibly the quality for the Premier League, I doubt that he really is of that level. I think that very much Championship is his standard that he can perform well at. And I wish him all the best. I hope he does well at QPR. And I would imagine that I don't know. We'll have to see how we do come the end of the season as to what happens with Jamal Lowe come the summer.
Just like the next loan outgoing we'll talk about in a moment, it's one of those deals that if we do happen to get relegated, it doesn't mean his journey as a Bournemouth player is over yet, because again, he could be an important player for us next season if we're back in the Championship.
No, absolutely, I 100% agree. I suppose I just don't want to use say the word relegation when it really is staring us down the barrel at the moment. But yeah, absolutely. And if we were to go down, you could certainly see a lot of our better players being headhunted for, and that would give space in the squad for Jamal Lowe to get back into the first team picture and possibly even nail down a starting spot come next season if we are in the Championship. So it's that's what loans are for teams like us in in the Premier League. When we aren't loaning youth players, we're probably looking to loan someone to get experience to make sure that if we do go down, we have someone that is getting regular minutes for the second half of this season.
And a very good professional that Jamal Lowe is. And from one very good professional to another very good professional and another guy that's really struggled for minutes. He does well in cup competitions. It's Emi Marcondes, a real fan favourite, John, and he's gone back to Denmark. And I'm sure he just wants to feel like he can get his game back on track a little bit again. Another loan deal. So potentially his ball career is not over yet. Look, I hate the fact that Marcondes is not in our side and not part of our team in this journey, but he's a great player. And again, we can't begrudge him minutes on the pitch because he's barely played.
No, absolutely. I actually think that managers sometimes miss a trick with certain players. Whilst admittedly, I think most Bournemouth fans would say that Marcondes wasn't always the most impactful on a pitch. And certainly when he was coming to us from Brentford, they did label him as something of a luxury player that would do well against lesser teams and then maybe disappear in other games. I mean, I want to say that his last league start for us was in the 1-1 draw away at Fulham, where he was part of the build-up in that famous Solanke goal. Because I remember that obviously he played the first 8 games. He started the first 8 games for us, and then as soon as Lerma came back, he was dropped. And he basically never came back into the team on a regular basis. But I remember him starting that game. And I just think that with the way that Gary O'Neill likes to play a very reactive game, wants to defend and just sort of see what the opposition doing and adjust to them, a player like Marcondes could have done a man marking job on a ball playing defensive midfielder. Like if you've got someone that's just not going to be involved in his normal spot, try and get him to be able to do a very specialized job for you. I think Marcondes could easily have tailored how he plays to a very specialist role, but unfortunately, he just never really got the opportunity to get minutes, and I think it's fully within his right to take that chance to get some more game time. And he did stick around. He had options in the summer. He wanted to stick around because he wanted to do his best to try and get those Premier League minutes, because you don't get very many opportunities as a footballer to play in the Premier League. And whilst he did have a couple of very brief substitute appearances, maybe just the one. Of 3 appearances, 1 start, 2 goals. I'd imagine most of that was in the cup games. We never know. It's another player, like you said with Jamal Lowe. If we go down, there's no doubt there is very much a space for him, probably even in the starting 11, depending on what happens to our squad when we go down. So if we do go down, I'd happily welcome him straight back into the team. And if not, then I'd imagine we'll say, thank you very much for your service, Emi, but please, best of luck elsewhere.
Only 8 minutes, I think, of Premier League football when I looked it up. But he's one of those rare players that I just want to mention one more time about Marcondes. He's one of those rare players that just looks like an ultimate professional, regardless of whether he's in the team, out the team, he's doing stuff in the community. He's always there for the club and the fans. He's sometimes the last player off the pitch, almost in the sermon mould. And they're just so rare in the game in the current market.
He absolutely threw himself straight into the club. He was. Did he go out to Uganda for the Ugandan Cherries? Yeah. He certainly got involved to a much greater degree than any other.
I think before Steve Butler.
Yeah, I think he did, didn't he? So he was, and that's why he was a fan favorite, because he just, even if sometimes a lot of fans got on his back for some of his performances, they knew fully well that he absolutely loved being part of the club. He wanted to do well for us and for the fans, and for the team. And absolutely the consummate professional, and could never ever be questioned his commitment.
So 3 going out the door, John, means some must be coming in the other way. Not quick enough. We could have done with a few at Brentford. We had a few 17-year-olds on the bench, but looks like things are happening. Now, we're recording this on Monday and it's starting to get busy. And our first incoming player is Dango Ouattara. Now, we're hearing this is agreed deal, confirmed by Mark McAdam, worth £20 million. John, it's a player that looks like he's a prospect, exciting, left-footed, mainly off the right, could play off the left. We'll show some of his stats on the screen in a moment, something like 6 goals and 5 assists. His real breakthrough season this season. He did make his debut for Lorient last season in August, but he's really setting that league alight or helping Lorient do really well. And of all the games he's available for, he started every single one. And I'm sure Lorient fans are not going to be happy about this, but Ouattara has taken this opportunity to come to the Premier League and help the Cherries stay up.
Yes, absolutely. He has, like you said, played every game this season. From what I have looked briefly, he's a left-footed winger that has been looked at from different people have come out to say whether he plays on the left or the right. I think like a lot of wingers nowadays, he plays whichever side he's told to play on. But you could imagine that based on how Bournemouth set up, he'll probably play off the right because he's a left footer and he'll come in. We'd like to come inside and shoot. But the one sort of highlights package that I saw put out by someone on Twitter, I can't remember the name of who put it out, was about a 2.5 minute period of a recent game. He was playing off the left. But what I saw of him was just someone that just given the ball and let him attack people, and that's what we're looking for. It's someone with some genuine pace, really good ability on the ball to dribble past his man. Things are a bit different in terms of League One level defenders, League One level defenders to Premier League defenders. He's not going to get as much time as he does to sort of stand up his man, I don't believe, in the Premier League. But one of the other interesting things about him is that he can take a free kick, which is something that we are desperately short of as things currently stand. The interesting thing for me to bring up is looking at his FB ref stats is actually his defensive stats. He's in like the top 3% for like all round tackles, interceptions, clearances, and aerials won for wingers, which based on the fact that I think you was it yourself that retweeted the Football Daily video that was put out on Twitter that someone mentioned that he scored a goal with his header recently. Scored a goal with his head recently, really attacking the ball because he's taller than I imagined he'd be as well. So based on the fact that if O'Neill doesn't have Tavernier, he really doesn't have a plan. This guy should fit in brilliantly as a Tavernier sort of analogous player that just wants to dribble with the ball, given it to his feet. He works hard defensively. And is capable of putting in, hopefully, a decent cross as well for the likes of Moore. But also, he scored a few goals himself this season.
We may have gazumped a few other Premier League teams, and we may have been able to do that because our current owner, Bill Foley, now owns 33%, I think, of Lorient. So this may have played a massive part. Now, John, I did contact a podcast, a Lorient podcast, fan-led, I think, that's called Le Tavern. Details for them will be in the description. They've just dropped me today a little description about Dango Ouattara. So this is what they've said. The player is very skilled and one of the best this season so far for us. Fast, smart since the new head coach this season. He's been a real surprise. Still young, needs to improve his regularity, but he is a gem. Now, the price is a bit crazy. No way we can refuse that money after 6 good months. Problem is that it means that it'll be harder for us to reach European qualifying position, but we now have the money to hopefully find a substitute before the end of the transfer window. Now, there's a couple of things I want to ask you there, John, and I highlighted it on social media as well, he is only 20. He's coming into a relegation scrap. We can't expect too much, but we obviously want him to hit the ground running. But this is an opportunity that he could not turn down. But they're saying there that the money is probably a bit mad for the player after 6 months.
It's an interesting one because if this was a Brit, then you'd imagine that's probably 30 million. Because the fact that if it's a homegrown player, it adds an automatic amount of value. But I believe Transfermarkt have him as 10 million euros valuation at the moment. Now, obviously, Transfermarkt goes up and down. It's a very unofficial source. And I find more often than not, you basically just need to double what's on there and you'll probably get the accurate value that a club will ask for. It's a 20-year-old winger that's only really performed for half a season. If you put it like that, yeah, 20 million is probably a bit much. But then again, we paid 15 million for Tavernier. And I reckon that's, while he has less experience than Tavernier, has shown it for less amount of time. He's also younger. I don't know, is 15 million too much? I feel so 15 million maybe what have been about more what Lorient might have expected. It's not a huge amount when you consider the amount of money that Bournemouth will make just by being in the Premier League for one season. I think 5 million either way isn't too big of a deal. And when you consider the deal that will pay for him is probably going to be a 4-year deal, I'd imagine. Generally, with a youngster, we're looking at 4 years. With amortization, it's only 5 million a year. It's not a huge layout for the club, I don't think. So from Lorient's side, I'd imagine yes, it's probably a little bit more than they were expecting. But when you consider the kind of fees that Premier League sides that tend to go for, I don't think it's too outrageous an ask.
John, is this the start of the feeding model that Bill Foley's talked about? Has he gone nice and early?
Quite possibly. We're already linked with another Lorient player. While Ouattara is a tricky winger who provides goals and assists, cuts inside, we've been linked with another player called Enzo Lefebvre, who's a creative central midfielder who I've seen a couple of... I've seen one or two people on Twitter sort of saying, like, this is the kind of creative midfielder that we really need. And I think really, if you're going to start doing that feeding and you're going to take someone from France, I don't know whether Ouattara has a decent level of English, but if he's obviously going to be a decent French speaker, why not take him over with another French speaker? Make sure that they can fit in together. Although Enzo Lefebvre doesn't sound. I know he is French, but. Then they can sort of move in better, work themselves out, get used to the area, and they're not feeling like they're too much on their own. Yeah, it could well be. I think that's what he wants to do, and I don't know. It's a bit much when Lorient is 7th at the moment, has a genuine task of going for Europe, and we're looking to steal 2 of their best talents to sort of put in a relegation battle in the Premier League. I wouldn't be too pleased if I was a Lorient fan. I've got to tell you that much. But as Bournemouth fans, you've got to see what's kind of success with it. Because go back a few years, and obviously Mike Ashley at Newcastle, they loved taking French players. They took like 2 a year from France.
Yeah.
And it worked out for them for a while up until the point at which it didn't anymore. But it's all good and well, picking from one club. You can't just stick to that. You've got to spread your net wide and find the best players you can out from all over Europe as well.
Thanks, Phil Tavern, for giving us that information. If you are a Lorient fan that stumbled across this video, tell us how you're feeling in the comments. Now, I think that's all the transfer talk so far. Oh, no, John. There's more. We know there's more. Bournemouth are also in for another winger stroke striker. And we know this player very, very well. John, it's Arnaut Danjuma, who is currently in talks with a number of clubs. He's flown into London the other day, I think straight after the Brentford game, actually, and Bournemouth are in talks. Oh, I tell you what, did we ever think we potentially would get Danjuma back, especially after he had a flying season for Villarreal in the Champions League? The manager that took him to Villarreal is now at Aston Villa, so we'll talk about that in a moment. Danjuma's not had a lot of football by the looks of it this season. And when I look at the clubs that are potentially in for him, Everton, Aston Villa, I've also heard Tottenham, although I don't think that's a real strong link. And then us. I know it seems a bit mad that we'd probably be the weakest club of choice, but there's really good reasons to come back to Bournemouth. We know he likes the camera. We know he likes the attention. There's an opportunity here to be a real hero. Nothing will be lost if it's a 6-month deal and we get relegated. But if he keeps us up, I mean, the guy's a genius. I mean, he's going to be a club legend again, potentially.
Well, I mean, I suppose the thing is that he might look at unfinished business on not just on one count, but on 2. Because the first year he was with us, he was injured for basically the entire season, and we went down. The second season, he was a star, but we didn't get promoted. So he's actually kind of got 2 levels of unfinished business with Bournemouth, as it were. And the fact is that as much as you didn't see it in his first season, in the second season, he really was the big fish in the small pond. He was the shining star. There were very strong arguments to say he was one of the best players the Championship has ever seen.
Alongside Buendia, I think. Him and Buendia were just absolutely blasting that Championship season.
Yeah, exactly. But, the conversations, back the season we were down there were basically Danjuma versus Sarr. And I think those arguments I think Danjuma comfortably won that argument in the end, as much as I'm sure Watford fans, if they ever come across this, would argue otherwise. But he is the kind when we are severely lacking in a striker position as a player that just wants to get the goal and get the ball and shoot, which we don't really have. Like, as much as Moore, I'm sure, would love to score, as Solanke does like to turn and get a shot away, he's more creative. He's actually one of the creators in chief of the team. He's a second highest assister, I believe, or joint with Tavernier. So, and with Solanke out, I think if you're going to persist with a 4-4-2, which I'm getting more and more frustrated by with the way that O'Neill continues to stick with it, Moore is completely isolated the more and more this goes on, because Billing's now being told to drop back a little bit more. If you're going to play Moore, you have to get people near him. And the old little and large combination of Moore and Danjuma actually kind of makes me think this is actually a real possibility, because Danjuma was playing as one of the two strikers for Villarreal pretty much the entirety of last season. And if he can feed off the knockdowns from Moore, we can go proper old school Premier League on this with a Moore and Danjuma combo up top. Get it to the big man and he'll knock it on for the little guy who will burst past the defence. It could work. It really could work. And the fact that we brought in Ouattara does not, in my opinion, as much as I'm sure other people may disagree, I don't think getting in one winger at all means that we're not in for Danjuma anymore. And if he really could see it as his chance to sort of be that big fish in a small pond again. If he goes to Everton, the name of the club kind of means that maybe it's not quite the same thing. And there's a lot of talent that's had a lot of money spent on it at Everton. Similarly with other clubs. Whereas with Bournemouth, he's got history. He knows the area. He knows almost everyone at the club at the moment anyway. He's worked with O'Neill before, as much as things are a bit different now. You know, it really does tick a lot of boxes for him, and it could definitely happen. I don't think I wouldn't say with the favourites to get him, but I would say that there are plenty of reasons why he would pick us.
Yeah. I also look at the style of play that we've had under Gary O'Neill, and I've spoke about Ben Brereton Diaz that I don't want to go over again, but when you're looking at that style of play that we have and you think, okay, then you've got to have something in the counter, and because you're only going to go in with a few players or three. And when you think of players that can take you up the pitch, and I mentioned Dembele, I think should have started at Brentford. When you look at Danjuma, he can take you up the pitch. He has no fear. He'll drive at players. He can score. He can go right. He can go left. With how we're trying to play and set up and attack in our moments, it calls out for a Danjuma. And with our style of play that we have at the moment, we know we're not going to create a lot of chances. So our conversion rate has to be very high. And he just is absolutely ruthless in front of goal. That's why I think Danjuma is perfect if this is how we're going to play our football. And just to add to what you said, going back to the clubs, John, I don't think he goes to Everton for the reasons that they're down with us. I don't think he goes to Nottingham Forest. They're down with us. And I don't think he'll go to a club like that. I think he wants to come to the Premier League. I'm sure there are other European clubs interested as well. If you're looking at Tottenham, I think he's potentially in and out that team competing with other players. And Villa, I think he's in and out that team competing with others as well. And I'm trying to convince myself that this could happen. But he plays week in, week out for AFC Bournemouth. And there's a moment to be God again. And that's given me the little bit of hope.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say about Villa is that as much as Emery's worked with him before, he worked in a very specific 4-2-2-2 formation that he just doesn't play at Villa now. He's gone back to a 4-2-3-1, which fits well. I think he has. I think he's gone more to a 4-2-3-1. He might have switched it a bit, but last time I watched Villa was a good few matches ago. I don't think it's quite the same situation. Emery doesn't have the players that he did at Villarreal that can fit into that system that he's put into. I think he's changed things up at Villa. So it's a bit different. Danjuma, as much as obviously he started as a left winger, he doesn't have the defensive work rate to really work as a winger anymore in the Premier League. You can't just carry someone when he's not going to work hard enough defensively. So yeah, I think that things are a little bit different in Villa, and it wouldn't quite work the same way with Emery. The other thing I would say about the thing that we really desperately need for him at Bournemouth is just lightning pace.
Yeah.
One of the things that Eddie Howe said when he first came up about when he was signing players to start the Premier League first season, we came up here, he said, right, we need players with pace because it's just a different league, it's a different level. And when you look at the players that we've currently got in the attacking areas, Ryan Christie, Jadon Anthony, even Solanke is probably the fastest one of the lot, and he's not exactly got lightning pace. Moore doesn't have that kind of pace. Cook, Lerma, any of the midfielders. We've got no good pace up top. With hopefully Ouattara, I don't know necessarily what he certainly looks like he's fast and skillful. Yeah. Danjuma's got that lightning pace on the break that you put it up to him and he'll go. So I really, really want to see that.
Just to balance this argument out with a final comment, I think I'm seeing most of the fan base are well behind this and dreaming. They can't wait to potentially see Danjuma lift the red and black shirt again. I have seen comments, though, saying that this is a guy that wanted out. He went in an interview, I think, before he moved to Villarreal, saying he was ready to go. Do you know what, John? That doesn't even bother me, to be honest with you, because I wasn't expecting Danjuma to be round for 2 championship seasons. The same with Lerma, really, and we've been so fortunate to keep him. This wasn't a scenario of other players that have down tools and said they're not playing anymore and have not added value and have not scored goals and assisted. Barring a mistake in that playoff second leg at Brentford, he had scored in the first leg. He gave us a lead in the second leg. He was playing to the final minute of that first championship season. I was never going to begrudge him a move. If he said something that he probably didn't mean in a bad way in an interview, it is what it is. He'll come back to my arms open, and I just can't wait to see it if it happens.
Yeah, I say the same. I mean, I can understand that people are very, are so passionate about Bournemouth as a club and see Danjuma doing well and see comments to say, I am ready to move on as something. I can see why someone would say it is disrespectful, but I think you also need to maintain a level of realism. And the fact is, Danjuma went from being our top scorer in the Championship to being Villarreal's record signing, playing in the Champions League, and is now Villarreal's record goal scorer in the Champions League. Like, that's not just a couple levels. That is multiple levels above the league that we were playing at. So to say that you feel as though going from Championship to Champions League is like disrespectful, I think it's just, I can't think of things in that way because I see Danjuma as a human being with expectations and ambitions. And really, he was way above playing in the Championship again. There's no reason why he couldn't. And he was our second highest ever outlay, I think. Maybe Tyrone Mings was slightly more, but he was Villarreal's record signing. We made a lot of money off of him. So I wouldn't begrudge him at all. And Premier League is where he will be fantastic. And if he wants to come back to Bournemouth, like you, I welcome him with open arms, and I would love for him to be back in the red and black.
Let's see. Danjuma might be playing in a red and black shirt again. Make sure you let us know your thoughts in the comments on all the players we've talked about, the loans out that are coming back at the end of this season, the potential Ouattara agreed deal that's coming in very, very soon. Hopefully nothing wrong with that. And then the Danjuma link, let's hope that gets stronger and closer. John, is there any other positions before we wrap up this video that you're really looking to fill to improve our squad again, going into this push for safety in the Premier League?
I mentioned Enzo Lefebvre before. The reason why that's exciting is because of some creativity, because we are massively missing creativity in midfield at the moment. That's partially down to the formation, I believe, and that's partly down to lacking Solanke again now, but also Tavernier, who was those two are our only real creators. I believe I've seen a link for Sulemana of Rennes, I think it is, who's another winger. I'm not sure whether we necessarily need that if we've got Brooks and Tavernier coming in. Creative midfielder is the most important position, I think. If we don't get Danjuma, we need another striker. And with James Hill out on loan, I don't know what our depth is like at centre-back at the moment. So possibly no. I think if we stick with the back four, then we've got 4 centre-backs, so we should be fine with Stevens in staying around. So yeah, I think certainly, if we don't get Danjuma, we need a striker, and we definitely need a more creative midfielder to plug the creative gap that we've got in our team at the moment.
John, thanks for joining me on this first January transfer window video. More to come. We know that's going to happen, hopefully. But yeah, it's been a good one to bring up to speed and get us up to date.
Yep, hopefully we've got this much to talk about in a week's time as well.
Fantastic. More videos to come on Cherries Red Army. Get your thoughts below on all those players we've spoken about and any other rumours doing the rounds. Really good ones. Really good ones. Not ones you've just plucked out the sky. You know, bring a credible source to the table and tell us other players that have been linked with AFC Bournemouth. But that's us for now on this video. Thanks for watching, me and John, and we will see you on the next one. Up the cherries.
Up the cherries.